Hey, just a quick disclaimer. This episode, Logic couldn't be asked to record the audio, so the audio's not up to scratch. And also, because of that, the end got cut off because we've only got as far as the GoPro camera lasted on battery. So, I couldn't be asked to edit it either. So here's an uncut version of this week's. Whatever. Hello, world. We are. Try and shove your mouth in there.
Please never say that again. Take your drink.
Where would you like me to take it? Keeps frothing up. Oh. 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 Let's start the podcast and we'll find out. Were you talking over the top of it? That's why I need to point it upwards if you're going to do it like that. And then, there we go. That'll do. I forgot that you keep growing.
Don't think it's that.
You don't think it's what?
Well, however tall I am, it being pointed upward, I'm still going to sit taller than the mic.
Yeah, but directionality is a thing.
Yeah, but like only by a few degrees then.
What's it called? The I don't know, it's something to do with it's a field around a microphone to do with the shape of how it picks up. I learned it in college and then forgot what it's called. I forgot.
How am I supposed to know? I don't do sound.
It's a directional thingy.
Polarity?
No, it's got something in it. Shall we do the thing?
Oh. Hello Internet, I'm Fireball.
And I suppose I'm the
Orbiter. Okay. And welcome to episode, what's this? 40...
Oh, Jesus, I don't know.
47. No, that was fair.
Oh, it was. Come on, say it. Say it.
Say what?
What you've been dying to say for episodes and episodes.
Oh! We reached your age.
You have. And your IQ. I can say that because you got 7 A's, because I know I'm not actually insulting you. Because you...
Well, you don't really need a high IQ to pass those tests.
No. I did invite our old-time, still European friend Pate to join us today, but he can be asked.
Mm-hmm.
So I said I'd give him a mention. He's driving somewhere. But he'd very much like to join in sometime with the podcast. So
okay. I'll see what we've got coming up.
I noticed... Sorry. I noticed in the last episode that we did, not only that you were quite quiet at times because I was talking right into my microphone and I probably killed yours when I shouted at you right at the beginning. But anyway, apart from that, I did an awful lot of talking and you did an awful lot of sitting there trying to get a word in edgeways, and I did a lot of interrupting.
Yeah, that's generally what you do.
So today, because I'm knackered, because I've been out bringing the bread in today.
Okay.
You have to take the lead.
I generally try to, but you're
You need to be more forceful.
unruly. Yeah.
I did not mean anything untoward. What are you drinking?
Staropyman.
Yeah, because I've been out all day doing Jesus Christ Superstar. Go and listen to my podcast. Better call Paul if you want more information.
When he actually releases one.
Oh, you fucker! Well, I can be bothered. I've tried my best. I'm going to be trying to get my catch-up episode out sometime this week.
Okay.
It's been a while.
I was just doing a low blow there.
Nice things come to those who wait. You've sidetracked me. What was it? Yeah, so I've been Jesus Christing all day, and I'm knackered. So I got home.
Do you
I
have
just
a
managed
thing whilst you're playing it? If you do say Jesus Christ, you just go
Yeah, pretty much. Jesus bled on the MD.
Ooh.
Apparently, and this is true, they've had to replace the blood because it tasted horrible. So they've got some mint flavoured blood. That's actually true. They've got mint flavoured blood because when it comes out of the crown of thorns,
Was it like syrup or something?
I think it is some kind of syrup. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what they use for stage blood, but it's got to be.
They should just
It's
use
got to be
wine.
edible. You just use what?
Wine.
Yeah. Well, I said you're not supposed to drink it now. Anyway, look, I'm in relaxing mode, and I feel like this. While there'll be, I'm sure, some political ranting going on at some point because there always is. I feel like I'm okay to just get a bit pissed tonight, and I had a beer over tea, and I've also bought myself McEwen's champion lad. Do you know what the problem with this is though?
What?
It's 7.3% volatile.
Oh.
Which means that whenever I take a sip and I go, ow, I broke my neck. Oh,
Never become a cartoon.
I wasn't planning on it. Well, not since the last trip, anyway.
Before you get too pissed, should we get on to newsy bits?
That was what I meant. Ooh, for the podcast audience, that was a 7.3% volatile face. News.
Yeah, quite a bit's happened since we recorded our Halloween special.
Yeah, and I was trying to remember what. There was something we said, and I've forgotten what it was, but it's out. It's all out of date now. This will be out.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. This has the potential not to be quite as out of date by Thursday now. On the UK politics side,
things were kind of building up to the 31st, and now
sorry about that.
dying down a bit more. I think. I don't know. I haven't actually been paying attention to it that much, and that is sort of my indicator for how much important shit's happening.
Well, it's going to be like 4 or 5 weeks of general elections, isn't it? So.
Yeah, we're having
But
a
back to the
general
news.
election. That's something new.
It is.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think we're going to get a 5-way split, and it's going to fuck everything up.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm generally not that optimistic about politics, but I think it's just going to be a situation where no one's particularly happy with the results, and it's just still a mess.
I think people on all sides are probably going to have a sense of hope that something is going to go their way. But in reality, I think the split is so divided and fairly evenly divided because there's so many issues at stake. It's not just about Brexit. It's not just about social policy. There's lots of things going on. I mean, especially when you bring in the whole Scotland issue as well. But the thing that worries me about it is me and Mum were watching. I can't remember what it's on. I think it might be the BBC series on the rise of the Nazis, and that's two things. If that does happen, that'll be two things that are the same as what happened in the 1930s in Germany.
Wow.
One was that the Speaker of the House was replaced in their democratic parliament.
Okay, but did that speaker stand down?
I I'm not sure. I don't think. I mean, it wasn't anything kind of. They weren't kind of removed or anything. I think it was a fairly because, as I say, it was a democratic parliament at that time.
Right.
But the point of it being that at that point, the right wing factions made sure that the speaker that got in was more aligned to their politics, if you like. But the other thing was that I can't remember what it was called. Their parliamenty thing pretty much ended up being divided evenly among about
Reichstag.
Yeah,
Not the Reichstag, the Bundestag.
something like that. It was basically a 5-way split, and it was all even, so nobody really had any kind of thing.
Well, it might have been the Reichstag at some point.
I think it might have been, yeah.
Because
This is what
Empire wasn't seen as like.
See what I was saying. Yeah, I don't know if you know. Mum knows our history quite well. I was talking to her earlier on. I'm doing it again, aren't I?
I don't care.
The problem I have with, and I know some people think that it's being alarmist, but it's happened before, so it could happen again. I find it difficult relating to the way things were in Germany in the first half of the 20th century because I don't fully understand the relationships of the different organisations that were involved. Like, for instance, the difference between the Gestapo and the SS. Like, if you try to equate organisations within our country to similar things there, like what equates to the military and what equates to the police and what equates to...
Well, that's the thing. It's sort of where that line between military and police gets a bit blurred.
Yeah.
That's when you know that you've gone a bit off course, when you're not really sure.
The other thing I keep...
but I think the SS were military. I think a lot of people know their like World War II history very well. So if anyone's listening that are nerds on that sort of thing, sorry if I get things wrong. I just tend to prefer like earlier history. It's just a part of history that doesn't interest me as much, weirdly. But I think it's
see, I'm the opposite.
SS is military and Gestapo is police. But again, it did get a bit blurred. So
I'm kind of the opposite, but partly because most of the history I did at school was up to sort of 1800s. Right. I didn't get past that. It was all the sort of the old royalty stuff and which queen married which corgi and
I mean, that might be happening with the Habsburgs or something. We don't know they're notoriously infamous for being incestuous, but I guess.
Plus the fact that I know my granddad, who I knew very well, lived through most of the 20th century, so he was born in 1911. So
yeah.
So
but I find like the classical era more interesting to me.
Yeah. What is the classical era?
Sort of ancient Greece, ancient Rome, that sort of thing.
I can imagine that. Yeah.
Going up into like the fall of Rome, really.
Yeah.
But I imagine parts of Egypt would be included in that. It's kind of
where was it before?
What?
Where was it before? Rome. Where did it fall from?
Well, it's just that.
Was it on a mountain?
The Western Roman Empire fell.
Did it?
The Eastern Roman Empire
fall out of the sky. Sorry.
The Eastern Roman Empire became...
The Eastern Roman Empire?
Eastern Roman Empire became Byzantium.
I thought you were going to say the Eastern Roman Empire became a bunny. This is going to be hard work today, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So, I just don't care. I mean, not that I don't... that's the wrong thing to say. I think when people say that sometimes they don't mean that they don't care.
Something does feel quite different about this election, though, where it is very single issue. What would be more single issue is you actually had a fucking referendum on it, but that's not going to happen under Boris Johnson. So,
no.
It does seem like most voters are focused on Brexit now.
If there is a fairly even split, what do you think the likelihood of a coalition, and which coalition do you think is most likely to happen?
I don't know. It seems like Labour and Lib Dems have this rivalry going on,
Yeah.
like beyond normal rivalries. Like the Lib Dems, I get a bit annoyed at them, and I know you voted for them quite a few times,
Yeah.
but they just seem too Tory for me. They seem like they were okay with going with the Tories, and I get that they did sort of try and hold them back on some issues.
But remember, the Tories used to be a lot nearer to the centre than they are now.
Yeah, but they're still fucking Tories.
But is that not the same thing as the when people sort of say, "Oh yeah, but you're all commies."
Yeah, but like they still did austerity, which has killed loads of people.
Yeah,
and put loads more into horrible situations.
Yeah, I think the Lib Dems they kind of fell on their sword to a certain extent. They had to sacrifice some of their.
It feels like
principles.
Half the party is the more moderate parts of the Conservatives, and half of it is the more moderate parts of Labour. But I'm full on like anarcho-socialist if I want to be on some days. So
yeah. I'm getting more and more that way as well.
But I think more and more, especially with this election, there's going to be a lot of tactical voting.
Yeah, well, that's why there's no way really to know what's
before,
going on, is there?
But quite a lot of the Tory constituencies were won by a narrow margin. Like, this is a weird thing with the first past the post voting system, is that really, in most constituencies, the MP that ends up getting sent to Parliament doesn't actually have the support of over half their constituents, which you'd expect in a working system for them to do.
Yeah.
Like they should have the support of at least half of their constituents.
Because going on to another bit of news, which is related in a roundabout way to what you were just saying, there's a few different threads to this that I'd like to pick at. One is, well, to announce what the subject is. The climate change citizens assembly is happening.
Right.
It's not perfect. It's not exactly what Extinction Rebellion were asking for, but at least it's a step in the right direction. But the reason I brought that up is because citizens assembly is becoming more of an accepted thing. Political sort of tool, if you like.
I'm not entirely sure about that, because it feels like there are quite a few problems with parts of democracy, and the reason that we have a representative democracy where we ideally, although this doesn't really happen, would elect people that kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah, but the point with this, if you know how a citizens' assembly actually works,
how does it work?
Well, first of all, I think it's about 3,000 letters are being sent out to randomly selected cross section of the population, and somehow, I don't know how, but somehow it gets whittled down to a few hundred, I think, two or 300, who all get invited to take part, and then it happens over a series of weekends where they all meet together in one place, and they're all split into separate groups where there's a cross section of different kinds of people within groups, but each group is led by an expert on the subject that they're kind of discussing. So, for instance, with the climate change assembly, even though a lot of people might not actually know about it, there will be climate change experts kind of not trying to influence the ideas, but just trying to make sure that they're working on
trying
facts.
to let people make informed decisions when
Yeah.
they do make them.
Yeah.
Does it how much bearing does it actually have on policy, or is it just more?
Well, the idea behind
here's
it
what
is
people think.
The idea behind it is that if a government, the proper way to do it would be if a government agrees to call a citizens' assembly, they agree beforehand as a matter of principle that they will accept and enact the recommendations that that citizens' assembly comes up with.
Okay.
So the reason I brought it up anyway was because we were talking about elections, and I think it was last year or the year before that Canada, I think it was Canada, don't quote me on that, but had a citizens' assembly on electoral reform, which I think is something we drastically need.
Yeah. It feels like the reason that we're having to have this whole tactical vote thing is because we're using this first past the post system. But if we actually had any other system that actually made a semblance of sense, then we would have a system where you could vote what you actually wanted to be.
You know who does?
Your MP first, and then whoever you're just okay with over the person that's currently in charge or who you really don't want to be in charge.
You know who does have that kind of system?
Ireland have a similar sort of system, but they...
Proportional representation? Were you not telling me?
No, they have something called single transferable vote.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking about Europe.
Oh, yeah, like the European Parliament.
Yeah.
That is quite a good way. I mean, it proportionally represents people. Although it does have a sort of caveat, although they do get around this by doing like regional elections, basically, where like the whole of Scotland would elect a certain amount of MEPs, or the whole of the North East would do that, North East of England, rather than it being just the whole country, so that each region has got like specific people for it.
Yeah.
So that is a way to get around that. But if you're just doing a general proportional representation for the whole country, then that might be a bit more confusing, because something like the SNP, whilst they represent maybe a large land area, there's not actually a lot of people in Scotland compared to England.
Should we try and not necessarily steer this into the subject of the podcast, but maybe consider the subject of the podcast in terms of the election? What do you have any feelings or thoughts on what you think the voter turnout is going to be like?
Probably higher than the last one. Maybe higher than the last one, but still not ideal.
Yeah.
I think the last one might have been... I don't know. We have got a laptop in front of us for researching this thing, but you haven't actually opened it.
I don't want to forget as well that something else that went through my mind, which was about the state of affairs in the USSR just before it all collapsed.
What?
That I'd heard about the other day, that the people that were there when it was, all about to collapse, said that it wasn't no kind of big kind of revolutionary feeling it wasn't a case that everybody was uprising, and it was a big kind of, nobody really expected it was going to happen. It was just, there was a general feeling for a few years beforehand that something wasn't right, that something was a bit off, that just kind of, because relating that to Apathy, it's kind of, I think consumerism likes and fosters apathy.
Yeah. Well, half the people that used their product actually cared how they were made, or how they were even sold.
How they're packaged.
If they actually cared about that and the effects of that, then they might have second thoughts about buying it.
But that's the thing, is that I think one of the problems we've got at the moment is that everybody kind of knows what's going on.
Yeah,
They just can't be. They're just so kind of busy with getting along with their own lives and trying to survive, and just every day kind of. Things are so comfortable for the majority of us in Western society that it's not easy to come out of that comfort zone and actually do anything other than carry on with it.
Well, that's the thing. You do, and this is the thing that you get into with, and sometimes it can be really petty, stupid stuff. Basically, especially on the environment, you will be criticized for like the slightest use of technology, or if you're like protesting poverty, if you own anything that you could have sold to get something that shouldn't be priced a certain way, then you'll be counted as a hypocrite for not selling your mobile phone and using that to get train tickets.
But you can't have that held against you if you hold your hands up to it.
But some people still will.
But there's a difference between knowing that you're doing something that's not good for everyone, but trying to do not necessarily stopping doing it, but trying to bring about a situation where it's
the thing with a lot of things in society, especially if you want to actually be heard and make an impact on other people, is that you can't really just like shut yourself off and use no technology. Like Amish people on.
I mean, we were watching that episode of Star Trek Discovery. We always talk Star Trek, or I do. But I mean, the point they were saying, there was a character in that was referring back to the energy crisis and the fossil fuel crisis and stuff like that, and basically saying that at that point, when they realised that they were going to kill off the environment, that they basically from that point onwards, every piece of technology was made basically coated in solar panels. And with the nanotechnology we've got now, I'm sure that I'm not one of these who wants to just like go back and live in the forest with the animals, and I'm not a hippie.
Well, I think that's the thing, that people that are against the argument.
I want all those comforts. I want to go to the cinema.
I think I think it's the sort of people that don't want to feel like they have to do anything, so they just say, "Oh." I mean, this is a genuine argument that I heard from a friend criticising Greta Thunberg, saying that her tweets use up Twitter servers like carbon output or something.
Yeah, but
the point is, crazy argument.
But it's not about stopping tweeting. It's about making sure that can be done in an environmentally friendly way.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is a ridiculous argument. But say a lot of people saying about going to these protests, that a lot of people are using cars to get there.
Yeah. And
a lot of the people that are there probably have mobile phones and are
that's
hypocritical in some way.
Well, but that's the point.
Yeah.
We're all hypocritical.
But I think it's that thing where they don't quite get to the realization that they are doing something which is better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
Even if they're using all the same things and the people are using nothing, similar things.
Yeah, I'll hold my hands up. I drive a diesel car. We've got all the creature comforts that you tend to have in our station in society. If you like, I don't want to give them up. I want the powers that are able to legislate and make it so that the technology is advanced and
also affordable. I mean, that's the thing about the capitalist system, is that a lot of the better options can be affordable, or it can just not have a price if it was in an entirely different world, really, where the things that are actually best for society most people use. That sounds like a good system, but instead it's more a system of whatever is cheapest people will use.
And I think to some extent, I don't know, I just feel like I'm preaching all the time at the moment. Because I was talking to John, who I was singing last night, we were talking about the vegetarianism thing, and he was saying he thought that, because he was asking me what my reasons behind it were, and I was saying, I'm not really sort of, obviously nobody really wants to see animals put through hell, but for me the main reason is environmental. And he was saying, he saw a thing the other day where he looked at a menu somewhere, and they were they were eating Argentinian steak. And you're like, for fuck's sake, you live in the country that has some of the best steak in the world, and you're bringing it over from Argentina. Apart from the fact that soya beans are being fed to the animals, it's just a much bigger footprint.
Yeah, well, there is a sort of purely like energy efficient way of it where you're using up less space and less resources if you just use the plants or the land that you would.
It's a good job
that you would either keep the animals or grow plants to feed the animals. If you just use that land for human food, then it would be much more efficient. Yeah,
I mean, I get it. It's a good job I'm not a fussy eater, because I'll eat just about anything, and 9 times out of 10 my biggest problem when I went out to eat was choosing what to eat. But actually this just makes it a lot easier for me to choose, because
the vegan stuff, I find the desserts fine, which I didn't expect to. But like the vegan desserts are really tasty. I just really don't like the cheese.
I quite like it, but it's not. You don't have to, nobody's.
No, but it's
but to be honest,
I do feel.
Did that beep again?
I think so.
To be honest, being vegetarian is a lot more environmentally friendly than not. And even so, you said to me in one of our podcasts, I think it was Animals, back in the early days, about just doing that, going vegetarian or vegan a couple of days a week is good for the planet, Just
yeah, well,
a general
it's just
kind
sort of. But even like you guys going vegan, I mean,
I'm not really. I'm not fully. I am quite a lot.
It's not like a committed thing. It's more just sort of generally if it's available.
Just most of the time.
Yeah. Mum's like that less by choice, because she has got a problem with her jaw that makes it difficult to eat. Me, because that's quite tough to chew, and chewing is not really something that she can do. But you guys both doing that means that there's just generally less meat, but also less dairy things in the house. So
yeah, I suppose you end up eating less just by of that sort of stuff by default. But I mean, and don't get me wrong, you know me, I used to eat meat and dairy stuff a lot. I mean, I used to eat a lot of cheese, a lot of burgers, and But one of the things I'm finding now, and I think this is one of the byproducts of making that decision, is that I'm finding my dietary habits are just naturally getting much healthier. I'm not like just shoveling crap in my mouth all the time. Anyway, how did we get onto that?
Anyway, it was a discussion about apathy around the environment. I mean, that's the most common thing, I think it comes up with people who are apathetic are sort of called to action and then end up not liking that, because it's sort of like they're being told to get up off of their asses and actually do something. But
well, see, for me, that's almost a symptom of this whole kind of. I know what you mean about the representative democracy, but at the same time, the whole idea of true sort of socialism and communism. There's different forms of socialism in there, but there needs to be some kind of organisational entity But in general, society, people will tend to look after things themselves if they're left to do that.
Yeah, well, that sort of thing is sort of. I think I mentioned this off off mic to you. Syndicalism, where basically the workplace is democratized and you have syndicates that are made out of workers.
Yeah.
That sort of those syndicates would join together to form some sort of government, but would generally control their own little bit.
Well, I read about a company that,
but they would be voted on.
And I shared about it. I'll see if I can find it on there because I shared about it on Facebook. It is actually a vegan restaurant, but it's based in Russia somewhere, and it's basically the article was talking about the vegan anarchists fighting back against Putin's Russia on the BBC website. But basically, their management structure is what's known as, I think the name of the company is Horizontal, is it? Something like that? Yeah, they're called Horizontal because every person is on the same level, has the same rights and an equal position with all the others. There's no management.
Right.
And I think, obviously there are things. I mean, this is obviously I don't think you can go completely that way so that everybody, full anarchy, practically speaking. But the idea of working more towards things like citizens' assemblies means that the general public have to do more and get involved more. But the government's more of just a supervisory kind of entity. And they'll keep the mundane and everyday stuff ticking over, but important decisions will be referred to the people. Not like as a referendum, but
Well, it's just sort of, we see that as a referendum because
but that's a specific kind of consultation.
Those are very rare in the UK, and they are very big decisions that quite often involve like foreign policy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because they're very open to corruption,
electoral reform, that sort of thing. They are treated with more gravity than an election.
Yeah. But it's not a very.
Which is why we're having a third one in the course of what should have been like a 5-year term, rather than 2.
But again, it's not like it's like with our system of democracy and our electoral system. It's not actually a referendum as well. It's not actually that reliable a reflection of society, and the way.
Well, that's the thing. Going back to the turnout in the 2017 general election, it was 68.8%.
That's actually pretty high for an election.
Yeah, pretty high for an election
in our country, which is a shame because it's not what I would think of as high. I think if it gets over 50%, I think they tend to think it's a good turnout.
Would you support compulsory voting?
Yeah, I think I probably would. I think they have that in Australia. I don't know, but there's a difference between compulsory voting and turning up to vote but deliberately spoiling your vote. You see, you don't have to vote for someone if you're in a compulsory voting system.
Like
you can deliberately spoil it.
Well, spoiling a ballot is
a political
casting
statement.
a vote.
Yeah.
They are counted.
Yeah.
I think in some countries they do have a none of the above option rather than just writing something silly on your ballot.
Pump up the volume.
Sorry?
Pump up the volume.
I have no idea what
it's a film.
Okay.
It's a good film actually. We should watch it sometime.
What's it about?
A kid in high school who sets up like a late night pirate radio show from his bedroom basically, and it becomes like, it gets like a cult following. It's really fringe, really borderline stuff. He'll like he's really challenging the system, the status quo. He's basically being profane and in a world where everyone in his school system is basically being repressed and being told to conform. But he's anonymous. Nobody knows who he actually is. He's actually a bit of a nobody in school. He's a bit of a kind of a loner, kind of, that nobody really, everybody thinks he's a bit weird. But he's this massive personality in this pirate radio show that he does, and the whole community, and he gets like hunted down by the authorities and stuff. But anyway, one of the things that he does is he gets this campaign going to get people to vote for none of the above. I don't know I can't remember what it's in, whether it's in like sort of school president elections or something. I don't know what it is, but none of the above ends up winning because of that. So it's a very good film about censorship and conformity and I suppose fame in a way as well.
Okay.
You probably feel quite uncomfortable about it because one of the things that's quite controversial is that he does this sort of thing on his show and makes lots of orgasm noises and stuff like that. But it's it makes his audience laugh because they're all like teenagers and they're laughing because it's rude and it's because it's against the system. Do you know what I mean? It's a fight back. It's against the rules.
But it's just sort of weird you doing that because it's not really against any rules.
No,
It's just the norm.
yeah. But back then it was quite shocking.
I thought you were gonna say like he says the N-word live on air or something like.
You got to remember, and this is weird. I went to Wembley Stadium to see. I don't know if I've told you this story. I went to Wembley Stadium to see Guns N' Roses, and in support was a band called Skid Row, whose second album, sorry, was called Slave to the Grind. They had a song on it called Get the Fuck Out. And it had a lot of the F word in it. And it was really, really anti-establishment. Almost like metal punk kind of.
Do Saints are coming or something, the Skids?
Don't know, I haven't heard of it, so it's probably the Skids. But anyway, they came out on stage and they'd had a letter from this. Wembley Stadium is in the council area of Barnet, who incidentally have just been on Victoria Derbyshire this week, basically for what?
No, I just remember the interview.
Yeah, Ken Loach. Anyway, smarmy bastard. Anyway, yeah, they'd had a letter. Skid Row had a letter from Brent Council. Bearing in mind this is a Guns N' Roses gig with Skid Row. I think Faith No More might have been on as well, and another band, saying that they could not perform the song Get the Fuck Out, and that if they did, they would pull the show. They would basically pull the plug. So he comes out on the stage and he's giving it all the like, who are these motherfucking Brent Council, not Barnet Council. Sorry, Barnet. I'm not sorry, Barnet. You're a bunch of cunts. Brent, anyway, Council. Who is this council anyway? These motherfuckers. I thought we were in fucking Russia or something, and all this lot. And he says, anyway, we're going to play it anyway, and if they pull this shit... Oh, yeah, they played it. They said, this is for you, Brent Council. You stand into grace, what the fuck's with you? Get the fuck out, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, when they're finished, they said, and if they pull the plug after that, there's going to be 80,000 fist-throwing motherfuckers in front of me. But it just seems so weird that... And they got banned, basically, from ever playing Wembley ever again.
But I think Ozzy Osbourne pissed off the Hoover Dam or something ridiculous and got banned from some town.
But for swearing on stage in a rock and roll concert.
It seems really weird now.
So anyway, I went to see him on the next tour. It doesn't make, he got them publicity. It was the B-side to one of their singles, like immediately after that. They got banned for life. And anyway, the next tour that they did, he went and played at Docklands Arena instead. I think that one was when he went full frontal. He basically came out on stage. Somebody slagged him off. Some reporter slagged him off in the paper. So he got the report, the newspaper report, came out on stage with it in his hand, dropped his trousers, like full frontal, like waving it around and all sorts, turned round and wiped his arse on the newspaper. Sebastian Bach. Classy dude. He was in the Gilmore Girls. Yes, he plays a singer in the Gilmore Girls.
That was a weird tangent.
Yeah, I can't be bothered staying on subject. Have we actually done any other subject?
Yeah, general like not caring, I guess.
How far do you think it's going to go? Right. This is the scenario, and we've brought it up. We've discussed it quite a lot. The climate change thing. It's all interlinked. The political thing as well. How far do you think?
Your Oki's broken.
I know. That's why this is here.
Oh.
I have an external Bluetooth keyboard because my laptop keyboard's fucked. Yeah, there are some massive pressing issues on there that are getting worse. Do you think? See, Mums seems to think. See, Star Stuff's making more of a contribution today than she ever has by not being here. I feel like she should be represented. She watches a lot of historical programs, especially about the 20th century, and she has this foreboding feeling that things tend to, that while things do change, they tend to get a lot worse than they are now before they get better.
Yeah.
At what point do you think all of this is gonna? People will actually, because you see. We see it happening all over the world. We had the stuff that was going on in Chile. There's been riots in Hong Kong for goodness knows how long. They're actually in danger of going into recession now because of them.
Right.
So it's actually going to be affecting China's economy as well, potentially. But I was listening to a thing recommending another podcast, Under the Skin, Russell Brand. There was a guy on there that was talking about how one of the biggest public protests that's happened has been the 3 million that turned out in London to protest the Iraq War. And they came out and they did that, and that was it. It was. They didn't do it. They didn't follow it up. They didn't carry on after that. It didn't actually change anything. They had this "not in my name" was the phrase that was used in the what was that? That was back in the Suez crisis. I think there was big demonstrations and they had the "not in my name."
What was that?
Oh, I don't know, but it's a while ago. It's this thing that they came out and they protested. They'd made their point. And then they all went back home again, and it was almost as though, like, because they've made their point, they'd said this war's not in my name. That was enough. That the war could carry on as long as it was clear now that it wasn't being we didn't agree with it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I suppose at that point, it's not full apathy, because if it was full apathy, you just wouldn't turn up to protest in the first place. It's almost like a level of apathy that kind of, well, I've said my bit, I can't be bothered to see. The point being made by this podcaster the podcast guest was that if they'd carried on, that 3 million people, if they carried on protesting day after day, they would have stood a really good chance of actually making a difference. I think that's the mentality behind the Extinction Rebellion thing, is that even though obviously it wasn't 3 million, the people that were there carried on for a fortnight.
To lift the line from Hamilton, this is not a moment, it's a movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And a movement is not an organisation as such. It's
a movement.
Yeah,
it's sort of
it is
getting people to come round a common goal. I mean, it might not be that they're even like working together necessarily to change something.
But it is, I suppose, it is the literal meaning of the word movement, that it's moving the public perception of an issue. It's moving society in a particular direction.
The public perception, because the public perception might already be with them.
Yeah.
And that's why they're there.
I suppose, but it's moving society, actively moving society in a particular direction.
But it's sort of moving the government to actually enact what people want. Rather, because the thing with a general election is that you're kind of limited, but both by tactical voting, where you can only really vote for the people that have got a chance. Do you mind not looking like a...
Yeah, it's the champion.
Distressed pirate.
Do you know any jokes?
What?
Do you know any jokes?
Do.
Tell me a joke.
Why?
Because I want to laugh.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, what were you saying? I've interrupted and re-railroaded you again. Derailed you even.
I can't tell you a joke.
Well, which is it going to be? Are you going to carry on with what you were saying, or are you going to tell me a joke?
Oh, I have to think of one now.
You said you knew one.
Yeah, but I have to think of which one. I don't know. I'm gonna play a video from Jay Foreman. Oh, do you mind?
Sorry, I'm a child.
Of Politics and Boring, which was a series that he did.
Is that a zombie queen?
It's the Queen with Laser Eyes, because she technically still runs Britain, but also technically doesn't.
So I don't bollocks.
Yep. I think he's changed the names of a few of these because
I mean
they got like flagged or something.
I mean,
I think it might be this one. Should you spoil about basically why people don't vote?
Does she really technically rule Britain, or is she just a celebrity now?
She technically does, but she realistically doesn't. Practically doesn't.
But then you could argue that about the Prime Minister of the moment.
Where's your volume?
Up me arse.
So, you're one of the 42% of people in the UK who don't intend to vote in this year's general election. Fair enough, maybe you're less than 18 years old, in which case your time will come. Or maybe you're in prison. Or maybe you're the Queen. If you're the Queen, it's your parliament and you're not allowed to vote. That still leaves a whopping 13 million people who are eligible to vote, but have said they're not going to. The press call it voter apathy, but that term implies that non-voters are lazy people who would rather stay in bed than walk 5 minutes to the polling station. The truth is even sadder. A lot of people are informed, passionate and clued up, but have chosen for their own reasons not to join in. What legitimate, decent, well-thought-out reasons could they possibly have? It's fun to fantasize and imagine that your one vote could tip the balance and change the result of a general election. Realistically, of course, that never happens, except one time in 1910 when Henry Duke Baron Merivale won the seat of Exeter by a margin of one. Much more likely, you live in a constituency that's nowhere near as marginal as that, and it's pretty obvious who's going to win. We have a far from perfect first-past-the-post process for picking future politicians, and it can feel like it's pointless. This is especially true if you like one of the smaller parties best. That brings us to reason number 1 why people don't vote.
My favourite has no chance.
Okay, fine. Maybe you can't change who your MP is going to be. But you can change their behaviour. How? The way parties behave in government is down to far more than just the election results. It's down to the election details. The morning after the general election, all the stats of how many voters voted for whom and where are there to be seen on the internet. And the party leaders are watching very carefully. Every vote for a small party is a vote taken away from one of the big ones. And the big ones will do everything they can to try to win you back. Don't believe me? Just look at the Green Party. Before the recent surge of support for the Greens, Labour had no intention of renationalising the rail network, but afterwards they did. Where do you suppose they got that idea? It's the same for purple, patriotic, pound-pushing pottymouths UKIP. The more votes anti-immigration party UKIP get, the more Labour and the Tories move immigration up the agenda. Well done, UKIP voters. Perhaps it's not the smallness of your party that's stopping you from voting. Perhaps it's the opposite. Could it be you're not voting because...
My favourite's going to win anyway.
Well, it seems really obvious, but what if everyone thought the same as you? Let's say everyone in your constituency thought your MP was really safe and there was no need to vote. Think that can't happen? It's exactly what happened in 1997 to Government Minister Michael Portillo in 1997 when he famously lost his so-called safe seat. Also, there's a big difference between winning by miles and winning by a hair's breadth. If your MP gets a thumping majority, they'll be more confident about their convictions. And presumably, if you like them, that's what you want. On the other hand, if they just scrape in, they'll be forced to compromise and pander to voters who never liked them in the first place. So you see, first past the post is far from perfect, but there is no such thing as a wasted vote. That's so important, I'll say it again. There is no such thing as a wasted vote. Maybe it's not the counting system that's putting you off. Maybe, and I'm sorry to say this is the most popular reason of all, your reason is...
I hate all of them!
For many people, after reading all the manifestos and watching all the party political broadcasts and browsing all the party websites and enduring all the TV debates, they've decided that not a single one of the parties speaks to them, and they don't even unhate the least worst one enough to give them a tactical vote. If this is you, rather than remove your voice completely, why not do something that's more productive and more fun? You can vote none of the above. In some countries, that's actually a box you can tick, but in Britain, you do this by spoiling your ballot. The rules of the ballot box are strict. You put an X and nothing else to make sure that there's no chance of error or fraud. If you put a tick, or colour the box in, or rate the candidates out of 10, or correct the spelling of the candidates' names, or put your own name and vote for yourself, or put your own name and vote for someone else, or write the lyrics to the Stonecutters song from The Simpsons, that's called a spoilt ballot, and it won't be valid. But it will be counted. Politicians will see the none of the above votes, and they're much more likely to try and win you over, and much more likely to try and fix the system if you've bothered to go out and vote. Spoiling your ballot is an absolute worst-case scenario, last resort, but it's so much better than not voting at all. It's totally understandable why people think that there's no point in voting. But if you do go out and vote, there is one thing that you're absolutely guaranteed. When you and your friends are bitterly complaining that the country's been piddled up the doo-wop by a prime minister you hate and a party you can't stand, you can at least take solace in the ability to smugly shrug and say, well, it wasn't our fault.
Order. Yeah, actually, should we pay tribute?
What?
To the almighty Burko.
Oh.
Sorry, did you want me to pass comment on that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can.
Basically, detailing the reasons why people don't vote. Quite often it's portrayed as apathy.
Yeah.
But quite a lot of people who actually know a lot about politics, for that reason, either don't like anyone, don't think that who they want to get in has a chance, or don't think that who they want to get in is going to lose anyway, so why bother going to the polling station, or just hate them all.
That could be a political statement in itself, but I suppose that's the point, isn't it, of spoiling your ballot, is that you are actually making a collective statement.
Whilst it generally doesn't add up to anything particularly large, it's still better than not voting, because if you don't vote, then that's not counted at all.
I suppose, in purist terms, spoiling your ballot is a vote against the electoral system.
Yeah. But I suppose you could become a candidate in your local area for like the monster moving party or something, and then vote for yourself.
Good. And
vote against the system.
The other thing is, I can't remember now. I don't care either.
Right.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so the other sort of apathy that I did want to talk about in this episode is that sort of bystander apathy. Where, I mean, in like a personal sense, like you could see something happening to somebody and just think, oh, it's not my fault what's happening to somebody. But it could be within your power to influence that situation so that it was less shitty for that person, for example. Like if someone's being bullied, I mean, this is particularly present in like the school situation. If someone's being bullied, you can step in and, you know, whilst you might not be able to stop them like beating them up or something, if they are just making fun of someone, you can just say to someone, can you just give it a rest? Or
see, that does actually bring me to a new thought about the subject of apathy. And that, because I was thinking, if that was me in that situation, turning the other way and not intervening, it would be more likely that it was out of fear than what I would consider to be apathy. But then the more I thought about that, the more I'm thinking, is apathy actually derived of fear or a form of fear?
I guess it's that sort of fear to stick out of a crowd. Of a crowd of people like going about, looking down, not really caring about what's going on in the world.
Or fear that, I mean,
they're going to flag themselves up as someone who's a bit different and does care.
But in reference to something like the climate change protests, is a certain amount of it maybe a fear that no matter how hard you try, you're not actually going to change anything, you can't make a difference?
Yeah.
That it won't achieve anything?
I mean, part of that, with regards to voting, being that if your favourite has no chance, say you vote for the Green Party in anywhere other than Caroline Lucas's constituency, they're probably not going to win. So it feels like, okay, what's even the point of voting for them? Because, you know, it won't make a difference. But in that video, he also said that voting for them made Labour change their policy, which means that the people that did vote for Labour are voting for a more green Labour.
Yeah. It does seem to me, though, the more I'm thinking about it, that this whole apathy thing is a symptom of the people who, the systems and the powers that profit from the population just kind of
that's the thing.
Being
when you are a bystander and
feeling hopeless
and don't do anything, you, without any actual input from yourself, end up empowering the power there. You just end up making them more powerful because it feels to the person that's being oppressed there.
You're so much more manipulable because you're not causing a problem. You're not kind of. I mean, I wonder how many people.
Yeah, it does take courage to stand up to something like that and say, no, just don't do this.
So, for instance, there are obviously a lot of people. I would like to think, perhaps the majority of people, who believe that all of this climate change stuff is real and that it's, it's something that we need to do something about. But at the same time, I wonder how many of them don't actually think that we have the power to do anything as a public, as a kind of
well, that's the thing.
proletariat.
Whilst we can recycle more, whilst we can all drive electric cars or go vegan. I mean, going vegan as a population, if the whole population did that, that would make a big difference. But one person doing that, proportionally on the whole planet's carbon emissions, doesn't do a great deal. Also worth noting, part of that is a lot of governments now shift to natural gas, which doesn't emit as much carbon dioxide, but it does emit a lot of, I think it's methane, which is just as harmful and also a greenhouse gas. So it's sort of not carbon emissions, but it's doing the same harm there.
Do you know what I'm finding though? I think it's habitual to a certain extent, because I'm finding, even though I have this awareness of the whole climate emergency, and it is changing my behaviour in certain ways, there are other things, and I think this addresses that accusation of hypocrisy. There are other things that I don't yet do, which I would prefer to do, which is, for instance, like I find it quite challenging to make myself go to the effort of taking my own reusable cup to Costa or Starbucks. Partly because, I mean, it would be easy if I had the same routine every day. I would have that cup in my work bag. I'd be going past it every day. Yeah. I would have it. But what I find is that
sort of needs to become part of like a cultural thing.
I'll often
it's accepted as the norm.
Yeah, I'll often take my cup with me in the car with coffee that I've made from home, and I've got that cup with me then when I'm out. But it needs to be rinsed out. I don't know. I feel it's almost like I feel like I'm being a bother if I haven't rinsed it out myself, and I turn up to, would they actually rinse it out for you? Would they just like shove it in anyway, or it's like, but all these things, it's like pathetic shit stuff, I mean,
I think it's just sort of people being aware enough to know what they can and can't expect from other people. So, like with washing out cups.
I think it's just a general habit thing as well. Because like last night, in the interval of the gig that we were doing, the band, we went to the chip shop, and three of us got a portion of chips each, and it came in the sort of the polystyrene things. Like you get your burgers and that from the chip shop in a fold over thing. But they gave us a plastic fork with it, all three of us. And we were only eating chips. The others used the forks they were given. But I mean, it is purely habit that I just thought, well, I put it back on the counter because it's like, I don't need this. What do I need this for? It's like, I actually feel more natural eating chips with my fingers anyway. So, but it's that kind of, when you see somebody else do that,
well, it's sort of
it becomes more normalised.
Yeah, that crowd group mentality, that sort of thing, where both and I think Darren Brown actually explores this in, I can't remember what he called it. This thing where like basically the whole audience wore masks and voted on what would happen to someone in a night, and he was basically saying how far he could take that. And they eventually managed to get them to vote for kidnapping someone.
Yeah.
And they voted for the bad thing happening every time because they were anonymous and because they were part of a crowd. It felt a lot easier to just go along.
Well, there's a nationwide version of that, isn't there? Big Brother. People deliberately, regularly used, I don't know if it's still going anymore, but they would they would vote to keep the person in the house who was causing the most distress to everyone else because it was more entertaining to watch.
See, when I didn't really actively watch it because I was mainly watching it when you guys were watching it in like sort of a background sort of way. I've never voted in it, but I would vote. I would just vote for the person that seems most like me and like I would actually get along with.
Yeah, but it's kind of, in some ways, it is.
But it's sort of voting
understandable,
to keep, like a really dramatic person
Yeah.
that keeps it interesting.
Yeah, because if you
Which
end up
case,
with
like it writes itself basically.
if you end up with just a load of really nice people in the house, it's
Yeah.
not going to be that interesting to watch because they'll just be sat around. Just do you think we're kind of like interesting to listen to?
I don't know. I feel like we slag each other off enough.
But what before we move too far from that whole idea of just putting a fork back rather than I don't know that it's constructive, although I wouldn't be against it, to actually criticise the others for using their forks or to taking them, because I feel like people feel affronted when you try to shame them.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's sort of people get very defensive when they're called out or something. For
And maybe
example,
that's-
you were just about to start biting your nails, and whenever I call
Yeah.
you out on it, you get.
But maybe that's
really
the same
antsy about
thing when they see demonstrations, and especially if it's younger people, because young people shouldn't be telling us what to do.
Yeah, well, it sort
They
of
see it
feels
as a
like they
criticism.
should
They
know better anyway,
defensive.
which they definitely should know better.
Yeah.
But they still don't necessarily do the things that they should be doing. But also worth noting, again, the sort of personal impact there, whilst it does make an impact on a wide scale, what would make a lot more impact would be if the corporations making the stuff that they're buying actually made it eco-friendly in the first place. Then they wouldn't, even if they didn't care, or if they did care, because I think quite a lot of people do care, they just don't know how to get the right stuff, and it's a lot of effort to go to get like eco-friendly stuff.
It's not affecting them enough. I mean, like the people who are producing it, like us, that are producing all of this shit.
Well,
We're not the main
corporations
sufferers.
still.
Yeah,
Like us as a country, but like we're not personally choosing what goes into
that's the
these
thing. I mean, we
products.
go shopping every week, and if I had a choice, and I do have a choice with things like bananas, you can buy them in a plastic bag, and like when you're going around the fruit and veg section, there are some things which you can buy loose or prepackaged. I always choose the loose options there, but there's so much stuff that you don't have a choice over.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want that, but I don't want to be leaving plastic shit all around the place that I don't need to be.
I mean, that making the decision in the first place, but also just making their production of everything
It can't be that difficult.
more
surely.
sustainable. Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of.
I look at Weetabix, for instance.
Whilst it would probably result in them making less money, there is this sort of long-term goal of if you want your company to survive, it would be good to have people to sell it to in a few decades.
But
When
that
might not be an option because everything's going to.
and sugar as well. I mean, Weetabix is one example that the own brand, the supermarket brand stuff that we actually buy, which is a lot cheaper, comes in like plastic wrapped tubes of wheat biscuits. But if you get the actual branded Weetabix stuff, they're wrapped in paper. And similar with sugar, most of the time that's in paper. But if you get one of the really big bags, they're like plastic. So it's like there are other options. I don't know how practical it is to vacuum pack or to to hygienically seal other materials, but we're advanced enough to be working on quantum electronics. I'm sure we can come up with a way of sealing stuff not in plastic.
I think there are materials there, and there is also biodegradable plastic. It's just more expensive.
Yeah. Well,
I mean that's sort of problem.
About the profit margins.
Well, it's not even necessarily that. Like on a sort of smaller scale level,
It is for a business.
I'm in an environmental group in my school, and it often feels like, not necessarily even like the pupils are quite apathetic, but it feels quite often like the kitchen staff are quite apathetic towards it, because there's quite a lot of reluctance. I mean, quite a lot of what we focus on is in the canteen, because that's stuff that we can like affect what sort of materials that is made out of. If people are going like, down the street and out of school to get their food, then we can't control what's there, other than like petitioning various supermarkets, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we can, or at least we would like to, affect what's actually going on in our own canteen. And we did try to, but it's sort of, I think a lot of people very easily slip back into old habits that are easier.
Yeah. But that's the word, isn't it? Habits.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I find is actually quite a bit of a faff that we've started doing recently, and when I think about it, when I'm actually doing it, and it is quite an effort, I think, yeah, but it is actually making a fairly relatively big difference in terms of our pollution footprint, is washing sandwich bags, and like sort of plastic bags that you put fresh food in the freezer and stuff, in the fridge and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Washing those out and then like hanging them out to dry on the cupboards and stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
it is a bit of a faff and a bit of a palaver, but
it feels a bit weird. But once you sort of get into that routine,
I think there'll be bags there that we've now used at least a dozen times, and it's like, well, that would have been 12 plastic bags.
Environmental impact, also like the reusing side of things. And also, I think in some countries, when you recycle stuff, they do give you money back for doing that. Particularly in like Scandinavian countries. But reusing stuff, you also save a lot of money, which is what this capitalistic system requires.
Yeah. Indeed.
Okay. I was touching on.
Were you?
On this sort of bystander kind of apathy, where being apathetic, and I guess in a way being apolitical, like decidedly apolitical, preserves the status quo.
You reminded me of something when you said about the bystander thing. Yeah, no, you're right though, and this is actually a fairly revolutionary concept that is related to a religious story. Do you know the Good Samaritan thing?
Yes.
This was something that apparently, and again relating back to something I heard in the Russell Brand podcast from one of the contributors, that people tend to be able to relate particular stories, or if you like, they tell themselves stories about the world in a way that supports their own worldview. And the example that they brought up was Margaret Thatcher, who apparently used to retell the story of the Good Samaritan in a way that her politics was justified in that story by the fact that the guy who helped, the guy who wasn't a bystander, could only help because he had the money to be able to do that. So it was like, because he was well off, he was able to cross the road and help out.
Basically relying on the kindness of billionaires, which
I suppose
they
would be
often
all right
get
if they
into that
were all,
position by being unkind.
but if they were all J.K. Rowling, then fine. But well, I'm not sure. Isn't what's his name? Microsoft man.
Bill Gates.
Yeah, he's fairly.
Yeah, there are some, but it's sort
generous,
of,
isn't he?
you can't rely on that as a policy. And then,
No.
These are the sort of public billionaires, but there's a lot of people like I think like CEO of Zara or something. He's really rich. But, like, he lives in Monaco and doesn't do a lot of press stuff. These sort of people that just sort of don't really flaunt it, and they don't do a lot of charity stuff. They're not really public people. They haven't done anything particularly revolutionary. They're just rich. like Bill Gates founding Microsoft, that's something that like Windows most people use, and most people are interested in that, and he's a very techie guy.
I think there's perhaps a potential for apathy to spiral as well. Because the reason I'm thinking that is it's maybe the opposite of the fact that I know when I have times when I'm down and times when I'm up and energetic and getting things done and stuff. And I can tell from looking at my own situation that the times when I'm productive and getting on and doing stuff and feeling good about what I'm achieving are the times when I tend to be going to the gym.
Right.
And it's almost like that kind of making that effort, even though it's difficult to start with, kind of snowballs. The more you put into something, the more enthusiastic you feel about it. So I wonder if the opposite's the same, that the more you kind of, almost like a spiral of depression in a way.
Yeah.
You kind of,
I think it's sort of,
you just don't see the point. And
no one really, you don't really get a reward for being a good person. Slight spoilers for The Good Place here. The main character who, basically the premise is all the characters die, go to the afterlife, which is meant to be the good place, but it's big spoiler, secretly the bad place, and they've all been picked to go with one another, to torture one another through like emotional torture.
nice.
However, they found a way out of it and end up working with the person who's meant to be torturing them, and escape to Earth, where like all at the moment of their death they're saved, and then that sort of used as they had a near-death experience, so they become a better person as a result of that. They realise the things that they've sort of been missing out on. So particularly this is quite clear with the main character, Eleanor, who had been the sort of person who was an arsehole to the environmental activist, was an arsehole to their friends, didn't really care about the impact of their actions, was just an arsehole that looked out for themselves. Started joining up to the environmental group and trying to be a better friend and becoming a better person generally. Nothing really actually changed in their life towards, like, they were part of different groups and they had different friends, but yeah, their life wasn't any better for being a good person. So they sort of slipped back into their old habits and didn't really feel like anything was changing.
I suppose it depends. You see your viewpoint, I suppose, because I was just thinking, like, apathy is not just, it's not something that is just a thing that somebody has in general. You can be apathetic towards some things, but like, for instance, a rich person might have a certain sense of apathy about helping out poor people, but they'll put a lot of effort into making more money for themselves.
Yeah, I think it's
so
that sort of...
It's not that they're an apathetic person, it's just that they have apathy towards a particular concept.
It's sort of that there's not a clear vision there of the effect of their actions.
Yeah. Like one of them things that when people ask you sort of, what do you think about this? And you're like, sort of, don't really care, it doesn't kind of...
Yeah.
Whereas you'd be really passionate about something else that other people might think, well, why are you bothered about that?
Sorry, really Christ.
That always happens.
Yeah, well, that's what Apple does. And Ian's in the bathroom, so I'll have to hold it in.
I'm feeling like we should be winding up to close soon anyway.
Okay. It's worth mentioning this sort of, and this is particularly prevalent with gay rights, where I think a lot of people, whilst they don't take like a negative attitude, they take this attitude of, oh, well, it doesn't affect me, it's someone else's life, that's their business. Which, whilst is a step from like hating gay people or being against gay people, it's sort of, they wouldn't react the same way to a heterosexual couple, if you get that.
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of, like it's what they do in the privacy of their own bedroom, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than
I know
just
what you mean.
a regular loving relationship.
Yeah. I find it difficult to.
So, spoilers for Rocket Man. I'm doing a lot of spoilers today.
Yeah. I've read something about that.
Spoilers for Rocket Man. The mum in that, when he calls her up to say that he's gay because like press is meant to start circulating around that because he starts seeing his manager basically. He calls her up to say that he's gay, and so that she knows what to say if the press start asking around, because that was still, I mean, it was still very frowned upon. I'm not sure if it was illegal. So he calls her up, and she says that she's known since he was a kid, basically.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't really care, but she'd rather that he keeps it to himself, and that she wants him to know that nobody will ever love him properly.
Well, she obviously does care then. if she's going to go to the bother of saying that, it's like it's almost like revenge, because it's like, well, you know, I was managing to just pretend it's not true until you actually forced me to confront it.
Well, I think it's that sort of thing of a lot of people see that sort of in the privacy of their own bedroom sort of thing as, you know, it's sort of like a fetish for like men who like to fuck men, rather than men who love men, or do sometimes like to fuck men that they don't love, and it's just like a heterosexual relationship.
Yeah, I suppose there is a conflation of sex and love quite a lot.
And also in relation to trans people. I mean, that sort of homophobia has mostly subsided now. I think it's getting more to a comfortable place where, at least in the UK, people are seeing it as somewhat similar to a heterosexual relationship. There is still progress to be made in that department, but, you know, most people will be shot down for outright homophobia, and it's now getting to a place where I think it's sort of around half and half of the people that aren't outright homophobes, where half people see it as valid as a heterosexual relationship, and
I'm
half
continuously
the people see it as a sort of, oh, that's fine, it's just what they do, it's not my business.
I'm continually not, I don't think surprise is the right word, but I notice that every now and then I find out that people who I work with a lot are gay or in a same-sex marriage or relationship, and it doesn't obviously doesn't bother me. It doesn't, I would say, surprise me that much anymore. So I don't know why I'm bringing it up, really. I think the point I'm trying to make is that I'm probably only just arriving at the point where I do feel that it's not worthy of comment anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the sort of thing that people can't really control.
Yeah, I mean, somebody today that they just kind of drop into conversation, you know, like they'll mention their partner, and I suppose it's more of a realization that until they actually refer to them as a she, and this was a girl that was speaking, I had already not made my mind up, but I'd kind of assumed that when they were talking about their partner that they were talking about. It's happening less, though. It's becoming less and less an assumption.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm happy with that. I'm comfortable with that. But it is, I suppose, a gradual process that... and I'm lucky in that I work in a world where there are a lot of different kinds of sexualities and genders. I say I'm lucky because it means I'm exposed to
I mean,
the varieties of life.
Being a musician, but also quite a lot of the music stuff you do is within theatre.
Yeah.
Which is notoriously full of loads of gay people.
Yeah.
Which means that you're sort of I mean, being at the pit is a bit different, but you're sort of towards where like more progressive people are, and
Yeah.
the sort of outcasts of society generally are.
You can't assume. You can't.
Yeah.
I suppose there is that thing now where sort of, you do get that kind of almost caricatured character that's like sort of, are you assuming my gender? And it's like, it's right, you can't assume anyone's gender or sexuality anymore. Well, you never really could, but people did a lot more.
Yeah, but the thing is, the only people that say that are the people that would never need it.
Yeah, you're right. But the more of us there are like that, and the more it becomes normalized, the more it will become more accepted. And I mean, I think that the fact that the pride marches and stuff are more and more popular, even see that belies my interpretation that the heterosexual community are the ones on the fringe there. In a pride march, I suppose they would be, but but there's a lot of straight people that are happy to. So that's the wrong word, because happy it's a bit condescending. It's like are proud to take part in a supporting.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's sort of, and it's I think more recently coined term being an ally.
Yeah.
To LGBT people.
Yeah.
And I think it's also realizing sort of where you're useful within that. Sort of, in some places, you don't need to speak all the time, but you do need to support the people that are speaking.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, like if I relate that to some of the climate change stuff, I think it's not important that you chain yourself to a fence or you glue yourself to the road. Okay, there are some people who do that, but it's just as important that there are hundreds or thousands of people who are there to witness and support it and cheer and give support to that action. Because if there's a dozen people that are gluing themselves to a monument or a road or something and they get arrested, it's got very little impact if there aren't 1,000 people there cheering them on.
Sort of, if a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound.
Yeah. Which I suppose is one of the things that I really admire about Greta Thunberg is because Extinction Rebellion's a year old now.
Yeah.
And just before that, I mean, she was a 15-year-old doing this on her own to start with.
It's surprising how little time has passed since that actually started. I think it was.
I remember that being first appearing on the news, that there was this girl.
It was just it was just her to begin with. I mean, there are other people doing climate protests.
I'm assuming there must have been, because I know she's often criticised for the sort of middle class, sort of well off kind of family that she comes from, but in some ways that's actually been beneficial because it means that there were probably some kind of contacts or influence there that could get that initial exposure that was needed.
The thing is with a lot of activism is that a lot of working class people can't afford to take like a week off work.
Definitely,
can't afford to be out of that system because once the protest, like if it's like a concentrated,
it's just another excuse to criticise anyway. Because if you've got money and you're comfortable enough to be able to have the freedom to protest, if you stayed at home and didn't bother, then you get criticised for that. So,
well, then you don't get criticised just not bothering, basically.
That's true.
Because you're not there to grab attention.
Yeah, but you're not grabbing attention for yourself. You're bringing attention to something else.
Yeah, well, that's meant to be the idea, but I think it's sort of, if you go out there and you're saying something that would change something, people are going to use whatever they can. I mean, it's sort of, when people are socialists, generally they're either accused of being a champagne socialist, of not really understanding the impact of their actions on working people, or they're accused of politics of envy from like being a working class person trying to lift themselves up.
People just like to criticise, really, don't they?
Yeah, I think it's just sort of when they haven't got their own ideas for how to actually make the system better, they just like to shoot down any new ideas.
I mean, we do a lot of criticising as well, but
Yeah.
there's a difference, though.
Okay. What's that?
We're right.
I guess that sort of just giving
That was irony,
justification.
by the way. I'm not pretending to be right about everything.
No. But I think generally speaking, we're more open to change our opinions based on evidence.
Yeah. Indeed.
Anyway.
And I bring it on. I'm ready to do the thing. There's something coming up. That's what she said. Can't remember. Something to do with something. Yeah, I'm ready to.
That's very helpful.
Yeah. But this is the thing. I say I'm ready to revolt. I'm ready to rebel. I want to stand up for things that. But at the end of the day, how far am I comfortable to take that? In terms of, I've already thought there are people that were there at the protests at the London City Airport who have been to court and are now not allowed within a certain distance of any UK airport. Now, while I understand the damage that air travel causes, am I not apathetic enough to actually sacrifice that privilege?
Mm.
Obviously, I can't afford it at the moment, but if I had the money to go to Disney for a fortnight now, without being sort of in debt, would I sacrifice that?
Yeah, you
privilege?
need to get a ferry over to France or Netherlands first.
Before what?
Well, if you're not.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.